The year is 2025. An extraterrestrial life form invaded the Earth. The situation became tense, and people had to retreat. The year 2038 has come. People have made a breakthrough in the field of genetic engineering, and now with the help of genetically modified soldiers, they have managed to turn the tide of the war and hold back the onslaught of the enemy. 2050th year, a unified genetic test has officially been launched. People who have reached the age of majority and have scored a sufficient number of points receive a special injection and acquire superpowers. 237 Sam Levins is a high school student experiencing the most important moment of human life in this world. Walking down the street, holograms of great gene soldiers greet people and agitate them to fight the alien invaders. A gene soldier or scientist is the only way to achieve participation in a genetic test. If you miss this opportunity, then this era will throw you to the very bottom of society, where a person simply becomes pathetic trash. Now, every person from early childhood goes through countless lessons and exams and all this for the sake of the coveted past, to participate in the gene test. To have the best physique for the single test, people go through intense physical training day in and day out. And after so many years of hard work today, the outcome will be decided. Sam receives a call from his mother, who decides to make sure that his son knows exactly what he is getting into, because the drug has a 1% mortality rate. The son is trying to reassure his mother since he has already passed all the pre-exams, and he would be sorry not to finish what he started. Many of his classmates did not even pass these tests. Mom still doesn't stop worrying, but she wishes her son all the best and believes that the main thing is that he returns healthy. They announce over the loudspeaker that students who want to take a single test and receive a gene injection must go inside. Sam says goodbye to his mother, saying that they are already starting to be called for a test. Inside the building, students are already crowding around and discussing what abilities they can get if they pass the test. Mr. Levins hears the conversations around him and realizes that everyone involved is equally determined to win. He headed to one of the designated entrances guarded by soldiers. He was asked to go to room 25 to receive a gene injection. Before you go inside, your fingerprints and iris are scanned and the check is successful. Walking along the bright corridor, the young man thinks that he doesn't even know what type of gene he will receive. He remembers how in the corridor the girls were talking about an incredible type that increases physical strength. There is also an exceptional type with its help. People are able to use unique abilities. But there is an important rule: you cannot awaken strange abilities. There are opinions that they are so useless, and because of this, they are easy to defeat. Sam thinks it would be better to awaken something normal like X-ray vision. His imagination immediately draws images of how he stumbles upon a crowd of beautiful girls and with the help of his ability can see them without clothes. In the corridor, he notices a group of guys discussing their fears about the 1% of injection rejection. One of the boys says that he saw photos of those who were rejected. Their bodies look terrifying. But there is one optimist in this company saying that they have a 99% chance of successful awakening, and from now on they will live happily ever after. The alarmist still insists that there is a big difference between 1% and 0. An optimist is called over the loudspeaker to receive an injection. The young man is sure that he will receive great abilities. Seeing this, Sam thinks that everyone seems to be hoping to successfully awaken the genes like himself. He finally approaches office 25 and, gathering his strength, wants to enter it. Just as he was about to knock on the office, a powerful explosion occurred to the side of him. The reason turned out to be that Optimist, because of the explosion, the body was on fire in the corridor. His friends immediately rushed to run, and in the meantime, he was emitting terrible dying screams. This turned out to be a side effect of the injection. The staff are trying to put out the fire faster and want to introduce another drug to try to save the boy. The employee extinguished the burning young man with a huge amount of solution from a fire extinguisher. His screams were no longer heard. They didn't have time to save him. His body was very damaged. This is already the 5th student today. This is another student whose genome was destroyed due to an abnormal reaction to an injection. Unfortunately, this young man turned out to be an exceptional fire type. His friends, seeing such a scene, turned pale before their eyes and decide to quickly get out of this place. Sam, who a couple of minutes ago wanted to boldly enter Office 25, now feels wild anxiety. He fully understands that he could die. The main character is seriously thinking about whether he should go into the office and whether he will come out alive. But compared to death, he is more afraid of becoming the waste of the genetic era. It seems to him better to travel beyond the earth than to live a simple life. Sam decisively opens the door, states his status, first name, last name, and his personal number. A female voice responds by asking him to go inside while typing something in the virtual system. Noticing a pretty employee, Sam takes his breath away a little, and at that moment she asks him to answer a couple of questions before the procedure. The girl reminds him that he must be aware of the possible side effects of the injection, including death. The young man replies that he knows about this, and she asks the question if he knows about all the risks. Does he agree to take responsibility? Sam agrees with this. The whole stage is completed. The employee takes the syringe and asks the last question, whether he is sure that he wants to receive this injection, thereby awakening the hidden genes in him himself. Sam thinks for a couple of seconds, remembering the optimist who was firmly convinced that it would pass, but in the end turned out to be fried by fire. But even despite all this, he is sure that he will never back down, and in the end, Sam loudly says that he is confident in his decision. The employee is satisfied with the answer. She calls his name status personal number and asks him to take off his pants. Hearing her words about pants, the hero was a little taken aback. It's not every day that a girl asks him to take off his pants in order to stick a needle in his ass. She explains that the injection will trigger the activation of the gene, and for best effect it is injected into the femoral artery. After the explanation, the young man certainly doesn't feel any better, but he obediently begins to pull off his pants. He asked her to be more gentle, but apparently the employee did not have a light hand because his screams were heard throughout the entire flue. The girl summarizes that the drug was successfully administered and distributed throughout about the body. The young man's vital signs are stable. The frequency of brain waves is also normal like the rest of the body. The employee decides to find out how the test subject feels. Sam replies that he feels absolutely nothing but in his butt. He clearly feels a throbbing pain from the injection. 10 minutes later, she rechecks his vitals and asks again about his condition. But he still doesn't feel anything. This worries him because any changes indicate the effectiveness of the injection. Will he really not be able to wait up? Another 30 minutes pass. The employee notes that no changes were detected during the observation of student Sam Levins. The girl rises from her chair and turning to the young man says that this is unusual and this is the first time she's encountered something like this. The employee approached him and asked him to stand up for a second. The thought ran through his mind that this was the end and he would never achieve anything. But he couldn't get up anymore. Sam feels like he's been shaken and the pressure in his head begins to seem stronger and stronger. He abruptly falls off the couch and begins to make agonizing screams. The employee does not understand what is happening. He no longer hears the girl's screams and questions. He is only worried about his head, which feels like it's about to explode whether the drug has really rejected him. The employee does not pay attention, begins to check his indicators at the terrible screams. His heart rate has reached 180. His temperature has reached 50 degrees. All his vital signs have deteriorated sharply. Sam feels that he is falling into the abyss. He ceases to feel his body. The hero feels the approach of his death. Finally, he feels light throughout his body. Sam wonders if he's dead. Opening his eyes, the hero sees that sitting in front of him is a huge astral body, resembling him in appearance. Looking at the body, he never ceases to wonder where he is who is in front of him. And at the same time, he begins to distantly hear the countdown. The countdown goes on, and a powerful discharge occurs so strong that it returns Sam to reality. The young man sits up on the couch and hears the employee report that after the first discharge, the student regained consciousness. Recovering from pain, he wants to find out what happened to him. The girl says that 14 hidden genes have awakened in his body. Sam cannot help but be pleased with this news because 14 hidden genes are quite cool. But he is not pleased with the further words of the employee that all these genes belong to the class of audition. She provides him with a form, after filling it out, which they will enter into the database. Sam still doesn't want to believe that all his genes are with the audition type. He heard that they usually work in public relations departments. Most of the positions will be clerical. He may have to work as an office clerk all his life. The employee asks if he has any more questions since she has already finished the report and he can read. Almost crying, Sam wants to find out more about his newfound powers. The girl explains that awake-winning hidden genes does not mean that he will receive abilities even if he received them. They are unlikely to appear immediately, which is why they are classified as a hidden type. It seems that everything is clear to Sam from her words. In addition to everything in common, the employee offers him her business card. If he wants to apply to their university or learn more about the hidden type, he can contact her. Taking the business card, Sam learns that the employee's name is Annabelle Prince, and she is a professor at the Institute for the Study of Hidden Types. He could not even imagine that at such a fairly young age, one could already be a professor. Rising from the bed, he says goodbye to the employee, and is already reaching to open the door, but the girl tells him to wait. Annabelle warns him not to get caught by an organization called Dawn Redemption. To Miss Prince's surprise, Sam apparently had heard of this organization before. The Dawn Redemption was a group of people who betrayed humanity and conspired with alien invaders. Because of these traitors, they have suffered quite large losses for the last 100 years outside the Earth. Even now, they do not sleep. They mainly kidnap gifted people for their experiments. The employee adds that 5 students who awakened 10 hidden genes have already gone missing. Sam thanks her for the warnings, but inside he begins to feel fear he has as many as 14 hidden genes. The thought that he could become a target depresses him. Coming out into the central hall, he can't stop thinking about what abilities he has. Now he thinks that it would be useful to gain some kind of combat skill. Sam remembers that when he lost consciousness, he saw 14 points of light. What is the connection between his genes and this astral body with points? His head still hurts by this time. Perhaps these are side effects from the injection. But his thoughts are interrupted by exclamations, trying to draw his attention to themselves. He hears someone shouting his name. In front of Sam are his classmates, the joyful Stan Vaugh, and the clearly not healthy-looking Chuck Angle. They ask how many genes the young man has awakened. Stan immediately says that Chuck awakened 11 genes, but they are all concentrated in his stomach, and in the future, he may gain weight and be fatter than him. The prospect of becoming fatter than Stan clearly does not please the young man, and besides, it's not so easy to endure this pain in the stomach. Mr. Vaughn adds fuel to the fire, saying that there is nothing to worry about. Chuck must be destined to become the first transmuted glutton in history. The guy can't stand it and starts fighting with Stan, shouting that he shouldn't delude himself because his 8 genes are concentrated in the speed of his hands. Only God knows how useless he is. Meanwhile, Chuck decides to ask how many genes Sam has expressed, to which Sam awkwardly reveals that he has 14 hidden genes. The guys forget about their fight, and jumping up to the young man, begin to enthusiastically tell that they have heard the maximum about people who awaken 10 or more genes, but they could not possibly expect that Sam would manifest as many as 14. But in order to cool their enthusiastic exclamations, the main character says that he has an audition class. They immediately distance themselves from him and will not help him believe what they just heard. Stan thoughtfully says that this is a rather difficult situation. Such genes are difficult to develop, and one cannot immediately find work with them. But Chuck tells the story of his relative who is also an Adite before becoming a monarch. He changed 7 jobs, and now he is preparing to become an abbot. Sam, in front of them, argues that scholars are not in great demand. Their work is mainly related to the public. The choice of universities is also not great. They can only enroll in care. His situation is also complicated by the fact that he has a hidden type, so he doesn't even know what abilities he has. Perhaps he can contact a university professor. Maybe she can help him. Chuck decides to cheer up his friend, saying that thinking too much is harmful, suggests that everyone go have a snack together. He knows a place with a buffet. Sam refuses the offer, citing his headache, and promises that next time he will definitely treat them. As the friends follow the young man, they wonder if everything is okay with Sam. On the streets of the city, interactive advertising stands carry news about what is happening in the world, talk about new federal policies, new plans for space railways, and also missing students. It is also reported that a team of famous heroes recently encountered drug sales. Sam's headaches do not let him go. Perhaps it is his genes that are making themselves felt. A strange feeling awakens in him. Is this really his ability? He feels how his perception has improved. He turns his gaze to the cafe opposite. Everything that happens there, the arrangement of things, the number of visitors. He feels all this perfectly. He can also feel what is happening in another room of this cafe, for example, in the kitchen. Immediately he reveals the peculiarity of this ability. He cannot see very small objects. Sam tries to look at the small object again, but he can't. It seems that the current perception of things is already the limit. He gives up his attempts and decides to go home to practice, but some strange feeling does not let him go. But this is connected rather not with his internal well-being, but with some external factor. And these feelings turn out to be not groundless, because at this moment, a man nearby is clearly spying on him. Sam decides to walk down the street a little more to confirm his suspicions. After walking a couple of meters, he notices that there are actually 3 guys following on his heels. They keep a certain distance from him with members of the Dawn Redemption organization behind him. Sam begins to frantically calculate options for getting out of this situation. If they call the police, they will most likely not believe that some kid has stumbled upon a well-known gang. If he behaves recklessly, he will suffer inconspicuously. Or, the young man decides that he needs to call Professor Annabelle, and today he will come to spend the night at the police station until he finds a solution. We are transported to the City Hall of Emerance, where a meeting is currently taking place. The commander of the Mary officers, named John Morans, is broadcasting. He leads to the fact that the report on the students for this year must be submitted, and anyone who dares to disobey an order will personally know the wrath of the commander. Professor Annabelle Prince was also present at this meeting, and in the midst of the commander's speech, she receives an alarming message on her phone. She asks John for permission to interrupt him to tell him important news. The employee says that one student named Sam Levins asks for help. He said that someone is stalking him. Annabelle wants to know if they will send help or if she should deal with it herself. The commander turns to an employee named Howard Lupin. He flinches at John's communication to him and asks him to wait a minute to give the correct order. The director of the Secret Service exhales and asks Professor Annabelle not to worry. The pursuers discovered by the student were sent by their Secret Service. Sam will be safe next to them. But the professor is wondering why send 3 employees for the sake of one Adite. Howard begins to wonder, they sent 2 people, why then there are 3 of them on the screen. Annabelle jumps up from her seat. She is sure that the 3rd person may be a member of the Dawn Redemption organization, and believes that for his safety, he must be eliminated. The girl turns to Howard again, trying to find out whether he will send someone, or whether she should go and deal with the intruder herself. The young man believes that all this is useless, and it is worth leaving everything as it is. 2 agents are quite enough to protect this student. Annabelle is furious that they may have discovered an enemy stalker, but Howard does nothing suggesting that the Secret Service are using Sam as bait. The chairman of the Care University Admissions Committee, Hank Smith intervenes in the conversation, saying that this is a completely rational plan, even though Sam has 14 genes, but he is only an Adite, so they will not suffer major losses, and he is an ideal bait. The girl is horrified and begins to quarrel with them even more because they dared to catch enemies on a student with so many hidden genes. She wants to know which of them gave such an order. Commander John replies in a menacing tone that it was his order he did this, in order to catch the members of the Dawn Redemption organization hiding in this building and to minimize the losses of university students due to their antics. Annabelle confronts him and says that he can't use a student who has just awakened hidden genes as bait in case something goes wrong. John calmly replies that there are no contingencies in this plan, and many changes, including the death of the decoy, were included in the plan. Sacrificing the life of the polymath student will ensure the safety of many people and will be able to gain some advantage. The girl can no longer listen to this nonsense. She asks for forgiveness, and citing the remaining matters she has leaves. Hank tries to stop her and asks her not to leave the meeting, saying that if because of her arbitrariness the whole plan fails, then the council members will send her to trial, and this is not worth it. She abruptly removes his hand from her shoulder and replies that she won't do anything, but Sam needs to know about it. The commander allows her to inform the young man about this, but under no circumstances reveal the plan. Annabelle immediately sends a message to Sam while Hank stands behind her, reminding her not to reveal the plan. The message reaches Sam, and from it he understands that 2 of the people are agents introduced for his safety, and the 3rd is a person who may pose a danger to him. This puts him into even greater panic, why the 2 people who are supposed to protect him do nothing. The idea quickly dawns on him that he is bait, and he cannot stand still. He needs to find a way to escape. His legs themselves lead him to one famous chain of coffee shops in the city of Emerance. In order not to be on a deserted evening street, he decides to go inside, where an employee greets him and asks what he wants to order. Seeing that the young man is clearly tense about something, she repeats the question, and he, relaxed and with a smile, asks for hot tea with sweet potatoes and milk, repeating that he needs to boil the tea well. She hands him sweet tea, wishes him a good day, and warns him to be careful. The drink is very hot. Sam leaves the establishment, and out of the corner of his eye notices a tall man standing at the entrance to the coffee shop. He goes further, and with his peripheral vision continues to follow the object, which does not lag behind him. The main character deliberately slows down his pace in order to reduce the distance between himself and the enemy, and a little later he sharply turns back. This is where the hot tea comes in handy, lunging forward. He pours this boiling mixture right into the pursuer's face. His enemy clearly could not have predicted this, pressing the burned part of his face. He is angry with Sam. But he stands on ceremony with the boy for a long time. He doesn't get ready, and jumping sharply flies at him, saying that if he can't take him alive, then it's better to take him dead. The idea with hot tea was not crowned with success, and now Sam is already flying in the air from a powerful blow to the chest. The main character flies into one of the store windows, breaking the glass into smither. The fragments fly around, almost hitting people just passing by. Having landed, Sam feels how powerful this blow was, and having analyzed it, thinks that the genes of his enemy are concentrated most likely in his legs. Mr. Levins gathers his strength, points his finger at the enemy, and begins to shout that this man is a member of the Dawn Redemption Organization. People around immediately pay attention to the suspicious man. Sam orders the Secret Service agents to arrest the enemy. Hearing all this, the people begin to panic and they run away shouting for help. The Secret Service employees are shocked by the current like an ordinary schoolboy discovering a traitor, and understand that things are bad. The man, noticing the Secret Service employees, rejoices. He kept wondering how many of them there are. Although he doesn't care about the number, he will still roll everyone into the asphalt. A battle begins between the employees and the traitor, which Sam watches. He notices that the employees are strong, but the enemy is not inferior to them. Meanwhile, the man gives a powerful rebuff to the employees, hitting one of them in the face. The main character, despite the severe pain, decides that this is all not good. He is the target and therefore must find a way to help. But his attempts to get up were unsuccessful. He was really well finished. He sadly realizes that someone is in danger, and he cannot help. Sam regrets that he is just an Adite. Suddenly, he again falls into a space unknown to him and sees his astral body. Taking a closer look, he now understands that the 14 luminous points are his awakened genes. And from this, the following conclusion follows. It means that the gray ones are genetic base points that are not awakened in his body. Sam realizes that he can see the structure of his body right now. Perhaps this is his personal ability, seeing in the projection that the stomach digests food to produce energy, and this power is immediately used by various parts of the body. The main character decides to see if he can control the flow of energy. He feels that there is a reaction. The energy on the astral body moves into the hand. Sam feels like his right arm is starting to hurt, as if the blood vessels are about to burst. If he wants to awaken a new gene point, he will have to train hard and for a long time, or use expensive drugs. There is no other way out. He must redirect the flow of energy with the help of consciousness, but something goes wrong, and the point in his hand begins to glow more and more. At the same time, the enemy does not cease to actively rebuff the Secret Service employees. Even the fact that he is alone and there are two of them does not help them, and the enemy deftly avoids the blows. He clearly has more strength and skill. Using his signature kick, he sends his opponent flying. A little more time passed, and now the special unit employees were knocked out while the enemy towered over them and rejoiced in their victory. He finally turns his attention to Sam sitting outside the building and suggests that he surrender. The rival comes closer to the young man and warns that no one will save him. He was about to reach out to him with his hand, but suddenly Sam woke up and opened his eyes. The enemy clearly did not expect such an outcome of events, and the main character, taking advantage of his vulnerability, stabs him with his right hand, directly in the stomach. The blow was not inferior to the opponent's strength and also sent him to conquer airspace. The wall stopped the flying object blocking the path. An impressive dent appeared in the wall from the enemy. The Secret Service officers, who had come to their senses, couldn't believe their eyes hadn't they been told that this guy was just an Adite. Without wasting a second, they decide to fulfill their duty and take down the traitor. By this time, the meeting was continuing at the city hall. Only Annabelle was not listening to what was currently on their agenda. She kept glancing at her mobile every second. Sam, for some reason, doesn't write to her. She wonders whether he managed to escape from his pursuers or not. Howard's phone rang. He was clearly not happy that they dared to distract him during an important meeting. But after hearing the information conveyed to him over the phone, his face takes on a tense look. The commander notices this and asks him to report the situation. The director of the Secret Service begins to mumble indistinctly, barely pronouncing the name Sam Levins. Hearing this, Annabelle wants to immediately find out what is wrong with him. John loses his temper and yells at him, accusing the service staff of lack of competence, suspecting that the student was most likely harmed. Howard refuses, saying that the young man was not harmed, and even helped to fight back with his help. The agents neutralized and captured a member of the Dawn Redemption Organization. But now there is another problem. The whole city knows that the traitors are going to kidnap a man. They will stop any action for a while. The commander is just as worried about how Sam was able to find out that he was being pursued by a man from the Redemption of the Dawn. Slamming his fist on the table, he wants to know who divulged this information to him. Annabelle understands what he is getting at, and immediately sarcastically suggests checking his communication devices at the same time, thinking that the young man turned out to be savvy. JN orders Howard to immediately investigate so that a 20,000 word report will be on his desk today. The young man unconditionally accepts the order. There was a flurry of movement into the Secret Service building in the city of Emerance. The identity of the pursuer was established. His name is Fred Paris. His call sign is Underpants. The employees report to the boss that previously only fighters of rank F appeared, and he has rank E, so 2 agents could not detain him. And Sam Levins is now in the interrogation room. He said that he himself struck Fred. The employees chalk it up to luck. The Secret Service employees exhausted the enemy, and Sam simply finished him off. Howard inquires about the student's current condition, to which his assistant explains how Mr. Levins kept yelling about how hungry he was. Therefore, they decided to first give him a snack. Entering the room, they could see a picture of how one after another the pies brought to him disappeared in Sam's mouth. Apparently, forced awakening of the gene point not only causes headaches, but also takes a lot of physical strength. The main character understands that he was brought here for interrogation. This was to be expected. The ability turned out to be very strong, but he cannot show it, otherwise he will end up on the surgical table for research. Sam admits that he received a message from Professor Annabelle, and himself assumed that one of the observers was a bad person. Howard thanks the young man for his courage, and apologizes for his agents for whom he is ashamed. The director had already suspected that Annabelle had spilled the beans, and he also thinks that the young man opposite him showed himself properly. He clearly has potential. Sam thanks him and wants to know when he will be allowed to go back home. Howard decides that they will do this. Mr. Levins must sign a confidentiality agreement, and as a reward for his assistance, he will be given 6 points and given 50,000 in cash. Sam reflects that according to the national merit rules jointly signed by the Genetic Commission's 10 points are awarded for capturing a rank Y traitor, so he was awarded the majority. The director had already gotten up and wanted to leave, but a young man stopped him, asking if they planned to continue using him as bait. Howard responds that every year geniuses with more genes appear in different cities, but many of them later became the target of the Dawn Redemption Organization. Therefore, they decided to secretly work with the Secret Service. As for Sam, the director mentions that he awakened 16 genes today, and now he is under the protection of Secret Service officers. There is only one unpleasant detail: the previous students with genes exceeding the number of 15 were not so resourceful, so they were all captured. Howard has already said a lot of unnecessary things, so he says goodbye and leaves to finish the remaining business. Going outside, Sam immediately decides to dial Annabelle's number and say that he has applied to Keir University Faculty of Asian, and perhaps he will soon become her student. The young man also says that the director of the SEC Secret Service said that he will continue to be used as bait to prevent gifted students from disappearing. Sam wants to ask the professor if this is all true, to which she gives a positive answer. The main character understands that danger awaits him, and if he wants to create his own destiny, then he has only one way: this is to become stronger. Meanwhile, in the Secret Service lobby, the main computer lights up and begins to transmit a message that object number 37 has begun to show unusual activity, and that if there is no response for a long time, the task will be solved according to plan number 1. 3 days later, good news comes to the Levinson house. Sam has been accepted into Keir University. While his mother rejoices, the son barely crawls out of his room, holding his stomach from hunger. He immediately heads to the table to have breakfast, and his parents never cease to rejoice and already want to send this good news to all their relatives. It's not without reason that Sam is plagued by hunger. In 3 days, he has exhausted his strength to open another gene Basie point in his left leg. His body can no longer withstand it. The young man even fainted while concentrating. But what's even worse is that it had zero effect. For some reason, the right hand seems more sensitive. It is difficult for him today to become strong, but by entering the University of Genetic Evolution, studying advanced knowledge, and using it in practice, he will undoubtedly be able to achieve his goal. The father decides to give instructions to his son before going to university, telling him not to stoop to promiscuity and to do this only at night. But not too often, otherwise the body will be exhausted. Sam clearly did not expect such parting words and is now awkwardly trying to get out of it, saying that it was all a mistake and he is not like that. But his father interrupts him again, saying that he and his mother have prepared a gift for him. Looking into the box, Sam sees rows of evenly laid capsules. His parents explain to him that the university will require a lot of resources from him, so they give him energy capsules. The main character, again, did not expect this kind of gift from his parents. These were energy capsules of rank E. These capsules are an important gene supplement for enhancing strength, but the vast majority of ordinary people can only afford F-rank capsules since they are cheaper. Sam begins to worry that his parents have spent too much on him. The father objects to him, but they do not have high salaries, but over the years he has accumulated savings, and they are more than enough to buy these supplements, while the mother is worried about her son and expresses fears about the bandits from the Redemption of the Dawn. He and his father don't want him to be a hero and simply tell him to take care of himself. Sam calmly, and with a smile on his face, replies that he understands them. In the evening in his room, he again begins to discover his genes and begins to try to concentrate for this. As a result, after a while, he manages to get into the world of his astral body. Sam watches as many lines appear in his left leg showing accumulated energy. He feels pain in his physical body. His leg is swollen again because there is too much energy, and if it is concentrated in one point, it will explode. The main character begins to concentrate more strongly. Changes are immediately noticeable on the astral body. Energy begins to be distributed throughout the body. The distributed energy begins to light up at many points. Even in the left leg, the distributed force lights up 2 additional points. Screaming in pain, the hero regains consciousness and tries to catch his breath. He finally succeeded. He was able to awaken 2 more gene points. Sam falls onto the bed, his whole body aching. He reasons that an E-rank capsule will only be able to restore energy but not mental strength. His eyes slowly begin to droop. He even seems to have time to come up with a solution to the problem, but he cannot resist and finally falls asleep. He awakens from the cries of his mother, who rushes to make sure that her son is already awake. Not wanting his mother to catch him like this, Sam abruptly jumps out of bed, jumps to the floor, and pushes off. But he clearly did not take into account the new points he had awakened because his jump was so powerful that it threw the hero to the ceiling. Having hit his head, he falls onto the bed and pieces of the ceiling begin to fly on top of him. The parents, hearing this noise, ask if everything is okay with their son. Rubbing the back of his head, Sam tries to show with his voice that everything is in order, realizing that the strength of his leg has finally increased. But such noise could not leave the hero's parents alone, and they burst into his room. Sam gets out of bed and, still rubbing the back of his head, smiles sweetly, telling his mother how hungry he is. But his parents notice another intriguing detail when their son managed to pump himself up so much, because before he was like a match. Yesterday, Sam was able to awaken gene points in 2 places in his left leg, and in his brain he himself felt how his strength increased. What is surprising is that the strength of the right palm has also increased. It seems that the genes of which parts of the body directly influence each other. But it's best to double-check all this, and the young man decides to throw the card. He tries to hit a tin can with his card, which stands in the other corner of the room. But Mrs. Strength is of course good, but the main thing is to learn the correct throwing technique. All the cards he threw ended up stuck in the wall. His technique was clearly not enough at the moment. His gaze is drawn to a plate filled with beans on the table. Sam is struck by the idea that the airflow can change the flight path of the map, since it is large but weighs little. But this scheme clearly will not harm the flight of soybeans. Having fired one of the beans, it flies with force and pierces the tin can. This sight impresses Sam. If you use a metal ball instead of a bean and hit it not in a jar, but in a person, the outcome will be fatal. This thought makes the main character happy, because now if he gets into trouble again, he will at least be able to fight back. Finally, the solemn day arrives, admission to the university. Many people gathered to celebrate. Parents wish their children a bright future, and bright youth wishing them strives to contribute to the association. While Sam's mother tries to contain her emotions, the father reminds him that his son should take good care of himself, and if he suddenly needs help, he shouldn't be shy and tell them about it right away. Then, out of nowhere, Chuck appears and begins to reassure his friend's parents, saying that everything is under control. He will look after his friend, and with him, their son will definitely not go hungry. But someone is clearly missing, and as he finishes chewing his chicken leg, Chuck wonders where Stan is gone. Sam says that their friend called him in his spare time and told him that he had entered Cooter University. Chuck is dissatisfied that he was left in the dark. The main character tries to explain that Stan did not want to tell him, since the boy's mother insisted on entering Coulter. Because there are more opportunities there, the only requirement for admission is that after graduation he will have to join Army. The comrade is not happy with this news because he knows that 20% of the advanced detachments which Stan will join after graduation are the first to die. Sam believes that there is no need to be sad. Their friend is a genetic talent. He is strong and fast, quite combat ready, so they should be confident about him. The loudspeaker announces that students should take their seats as there are only 10 minutes left. The main character says goodbye to his parents. They shout after him that as soon as he gets there, he will definitely let them know. All students bring their things and try to get comfortable in the transport that will take them to the university, throwing his suitcase onto the shelf. Chuck promises that he will have an affair with the first beauty of the university, since he spent his pink school years on knowledge and preparation. The guys sitting nearby, hearing his speech, begin to mock him, saying that they heard about the genes located in his stomach, and how they stopped letting him into buffets throughout the city. They do not stop their ridicule, adding that what a first beauty he is because he is far from even the 10th. Sam decides to stand up for his friend and orders Metacalps to shut his mouth if he can't talk. But Met doesn't see anything wrong with smart people telling the truth. The atmosphere is heating up, and the newly minted students are already thinking about starting a fight. But a man who looks like a professor manages to besiege them. He orders them to sort out all their relationships on the street. T grabs Sam by the shoulders and asks him to better forget about everything because there are teachers here. The main character finally decides to tell Meta to keep his mouth shut. From now on, this is for his own safety. The teacher once again warns the children that one more such prank, and he will show them a happy future. The stern man decides to finally introduce himself. His name is Roast Foamt. He works in the education department of the city of Emir, and he was appointed to accompany them. Roast hopes that students will listen to his commands and maintain discipline on the road, but if someone decides to excel, he will be more than happy to teach them a lesson. Sitting down, Chuck advises Sam to calm down and distracts him by asking whether his friend knows who is sitting next to Metacalps. Next to him, it turns out, is a student named Tong Werner. He is a real machine, and during a single test, he awakened 16 genes. Sam remembers that Secret Service Director Howard may have mentioned this student. Also sitting not far from them is a talented girl named Marie Sank. Chuck believes that this is the perfect balance of strength and beauty. The young man already has hearts in his eyes. Sam tearfully asks him not to make him blush and orders him to erase this stupid face from his face. Professor Annabelle, already familiar to us, suddenly enters the room, leaving everyone around indifferent. Here and there, conversations are heard about what a beautiful woman she is. Her charm and attractiveness catches everyone's eye. She introduces herself to the students and is also among them, accompanying them. Annabelle warns that if anyone has any questions or requests for help, they can safely contact her. Sam's heart begins to beat a little faster. Did the professor also get into this car? At the same time, the transport continues to move further along the given route. Commander John is informed that the transport convoy has already set off, and each vehicle has launched a generator of ultrafine radiation particles, and all signals are turned off, except for the military communication channel. In recent years, due to the active implementation of the single genetic test policy, members of the criminal organization have lost a stable source of fighting forces, so the registration season is a high risk of being attacked. The soldier adds that usually the enemies set up an ambush in the middle of the route, so this time it is up to the commander to decide which route the convoy will take. There are about 100 cars here, and finding a car with students is more difficult than taking to the skies. John decides that he needs to be more careful if the enemies realize that they cannot take the students. They will immediately kill all the soldiers. Machine number 3 is the main priority. They have no room for error. Sam realizes that he, his friend Chuck Tong Warner, and Marie Sank are the students with the most genes this year. In other words, the treacherous organization has definitely noticed their car. Kyoto, where they are heading, is in the east, but for some reason they are moving to the west. Apparently they deliberately chose this route in order to confuse their enemies. Outside the window, the young man watches how the forest is entwined with vines and how many unusual plants grow here. Sam thinks, how many years have people not set foot in the wild? Perhaps he himself will try to visit there in the future. Roast asks everyone to pay attention. In 30 minutes, they will reach the first supply point. The escort warns that the car will not stay there for long, so they only have 3 minutes. Under no circumstances should they approach the wall. Otherwise, the soldiers will kill them. The vehicle parks, and upon going outside, Chuck notes that this base looks scary. Seeing everything that is happening and soldiers armed to the teeth, Sam understands that it is not safe here. Students suddenly run out of their cars and begin to rush to the restrooms since they have already spent many hours on the road. Having done all his business, Sam notices that a man has locked himself in the booth and it's almost time to go back. The young man decides to use one of his abilities using telepathy. He wants to quietly check who is in this booth. Having illuminated the booth, he realizes to his surprise that their teacher Roast is in it, who is trying to stuff something into his mouth. Sensing something strange, the teacher quickly opens the door and looks outside. Not finding anyone in his field of vision, he decisively moves on while Sam is hiding behind one of the walls. He suspects that the teacher is doing something in secret. The young man decides to turn to the soldiers of this supply point for help. He tells them that their teacher was nervously trying to stuff something into his mouth, hiding in one of the booths. The soldiers, hearing this, cannot contain their laughter. Sam does not share their fun. They want to know why the student was spying on his teacher, but the hero's excuses are interrupted by the announcement that there are only 30 seconds left, demanding that everyone immediately return to their seats. Sam takes off because the cars are about to start driving away. Roast, who is accompanying him, is waiting for him at the gangway and is already beginning to scold the student for the fact that everyone is now waiting only for him. Already at the entrance to the transport, Sam decides to ask the teacher what he ate then. This question took Rast by surprise. He begins to scream and ask what kind of nonsense his ward is talking about. Sam turns around and says with a smile that he just wanted to know if there was a canteen on base. Entering the salon, the main character apologizes to everyone for making everyone wait for him walking to his place. Sam can't help but think that Rouse Fomet is clearly hiding something. The convoy leaves the base, and while the main character continues to watch the escort out of the corner of his eye, his friend Chuck offers him a snack. Mr. Levins also noted that the suspect had 2 dentures, but something was clearly wrong with him. He is consumed by the thought of whether he should inform the soldiers about this, or maybe they are at the same time. He doesn't know for sure. So there's no point in putting himself at risk. But if anyone needs to report this, then there is one person whom he can trust. Sam, without a shadow of a doubt, goes to Professor Annabelle and asks permission to sit next to her. She is interested in what he wants from her, and the young man begins to tell her noodles about the fact that he wants to ask a couple of questions about a hidden type of genes. The girl allows him to sit next to him, which causes a heated discussion on the part of young students who believe that such a simpleton should not sit with a goddess. But the professor is not stupid, and as soon as Sam lands next to her, she wants to find out what exactly he wanted from her. The young man carefully hands her the phone, where in the notes he described the whole situation with the IDs of Teacher Rowe, separately mentioning his 2 strange prostheses. Seeing this information, Annabelle immediately gets up from her seat and, heading to the teacher, asks permission to check his mouth. Roast, alarmed, also gets up from his seat but does not have time to do anything because the professor has already pressed him to the ceiling with her force. He tries to find out from her what she is doing, but the girl weakens her strength and he falls to the floor with a roar. The soldiers, noticed knowing this mess, take a fighting position and hold the escorts at gunpoint. But Professor Annabelle, with her most fearful gaze, and as if not in her own voice, orders them to sit down. The soldiers, trembling with fear, let go of their weapons, obeying her orders. Meanwhile, the teacher is already wringing Roast's hands behind his back while he shouts that she seems to have gone crazy. Sam has already rushed to the suspect. On Annabelle's orders, he is trying to pull his dentures out of his mouth. The main character manages to get 2 dentures. He hands them to his ally so that she can conduct an analysis. One glance was enough for the professor to understand that these are magnetized tantalum transmitters. This is a generator of secondary ultra-low waves. Such devices are extremely rare. They are capable of bypassing conventional protection. Realizing the seriousness of the whole situation, Annabelle wants to know who he was passing on the information to. Roast begins to laugh. He didn't even think that he would be discovered. But even with this outcome, they won't be able to do anything. Now no one will be able to escape. Meanwhile, the employee reports to the commander that the transport convoy has begun to move. As soon as they reach the plain, the organization of traitors will no longer reach them. But then another employee bursts into the office and reports that car number 3 has gone off the intended course. The messenger reports that vehicle number 3 is requesting direct communication with the commander. Professor Annabelle gets in touch. She reports that an enemy spy was caught in their car, and at the moment their route has been revealed. Commander John is beside himself with rage. He orders to immediately go to car number 3 and change the route also, while a convoy of vehicles is moving forward to help. He requests that aviation equipment be convened from nearby military units. The controller standing at the control panel shouts that he notices several flying objects in the air. Energy charges were launched by the enemies in the direction of their transport column. John commands the vehicles to maneuver. But his subordinates were no longer able to carry out this order. The discharges turned out to be faster and had already undermined the middle of the column. John takes the helm and tells all employees that the enemy has precision weapons. The remaining vehicles must hold the line and wait for reinforcements. Annabelle declares an emergency, and as per instructions, she tells everyone to dismantle their seats. Everyone obeys her orders, and while Sam is dismantling the chair, he thinks about how the organization of traitors easily reach the students. This is all completely different from what is advertised on TV. Having made shields from specially equipped chairs, the students slowly begin to lower the cars down the ramp. The commander has already arrived on the battlefield, and on the radio he orders to launch projectiles with electromagnetic interference and guided mines, since the enemies have devilish impulsive guns. More and more it becomes more and more dangerous every now and then. Explosions and return shots occur everywhere. Radars detect that an object has appeared in the air, and the guidance systems suddenly begin to shoot simultaneously at one place. From the clouds of smoke, enemies with guns at the ready appear sharply. They deftly maneuver in the air on flying boards. But on the ground they are met by local troops who successfully fight back and shoot down many from their aircraft. Seeing how deftly the people who got out of his car took weapons, Sam realizes that the soldiers were undercover in the form of students. It seems that the army prepared much more thoroughly than he expected. The commander is informed that reinforcements will arrive at their location in about 3 minutes. Suddenly, the ground under their feet begins to shake, and John, realizing that something is clearly about to happen, shouts that the enemy is underground. As soon as they manage to jump and lift their heels off the ground, they begin to fight their way up under them like spears made of stones. At that moment, many soldiers are overtaken by death. It becomes clear to everyone that this is not just a weapon. It is the ability of the owner of a hidden type. Annabelle immediately clarifies that this is at least a gradually altered V-rank genetic mutant. Perhaps he has a complete transformation, but his attack radius is limited. In the distance of the forest, they notice 2 opponents, one of whom clearly launched a final deadly attack on them. The troops concentrate on the enemies and return fire. But not everything is so simple. The enemy takes out a katana, and with lightning speed he fights off and dodges bullets. The villain shouts that there is no benefit from training soldiers today. They will all die. With a new round of strength, he makes his earth and spears even larger, and is already pushing the machine onto him with soldiers. The ground where ordinary students stand is also not in a calm state. It begins to collapse. The enemy's target is a car with students. Realizing that things can't get any worse, the commander quickly heads out to neutralize the enemy. The enemy does not have time to get his bearings before John has already cut his katana and pierced the traitor through with a spear. A powerful explosion occurs which throws the accomplice to the side. Henchmen run to the traitor, and the man with the hidden gene orders them to buy him a little more time. At this time, help finally arrives for the guys. Chuck notices that the commander attracted all the enemy fire to himself. Having formed a strong shield around himself, not a single bullet could injure John. He successfully continues to withstand the onslaught of his opponents, and scatters them with his spear in all directions. Chuck and Sam, watching this, understand what the expression transcendental power means. Strange sounds begin to be heard from the forest, similar to the clatter of huge paws and hooves. Marie is the first to notice this. Annabelle immediately realizes that these sounds can only be made by mutants who came to the aid of their enemy. Noticing these creatures, the army does not stand still and begins to fire at them from cannons in order to prevent them from getting closer. But the animals turn out to be no less agile, and now the tiger destroys one of the cannons, thereby allowing its relatives to break through. The wolves begin to cut the soldiers with their claws and bite their teeth into human flesh. Sam realizes with horror that the last line of defense is almost destroyed. Roast, lying on the ground, continues to gloat, saying that he warned them of the consequences. Annabelle orders him to be silent and tramples the traitor head into the ground with all her might. She tries to calm down the panicking students by saying that there are other teachers here besides her, so no one will touch them. Having gathered with other teachers who also have more than one ability, they act as the last line of defense. One of the mutants already wanted to attack the remaining soldiers, but the teacher manages to stop him in time, who suddenly appeared behind him and, grabbing the tiger's skull, began to squeeze it with force. Another young man who looks like a wolverine is constantly cutting down wolves right and left. Commander JN yells for them to quickly move towards the third vehicle because the traitors are targeting it. Annabelle replies that everyone has already understood this and there is no point in commanding now. Sam thinks that the professor most likely also has a hidden type. He wonders what methods of struggle she will use. He expected to see anything, but Annabelle simply took out metal balls and, throwing them with force, inflicted a ton of lethal damage on the enemies. She notices another mutant who has already closed his paw on the neck of one of the students. The girl immediately carries out the same attack on him. The tiger manages to dodge while releasing the hostage. The enemy is angry. Where are their distant support units now? Meanwhile, the already familiar energy charges are directed towards Annabelle. But fortunately, the girl manages to use the shield and the bullet simply gets stuck in it, unable to penetrate the barrier. But the enemy's attacks continue with redoubled force. The professor continues to build an even larger and more powerful shield around himself. The mutant decides to try to call for some more reinforcements and emits a loud whistle as best he can. Help comes to the enemy from the air in the form of giant eagles, which quickly dive down to tear the enemy with their sharp claws. Animals and birds begin to attack with redoubled force. The army and teachers begin to rapidly lose ground. In all this chaos, Sam hears Marie screaming for help. He already sees an angry wolf flying at her from above. He thinks how good it is that the steel ball he brought in advance, just in case, really came in handy. The ball flew by so quickly that Marie didn't even have time to understand how the wolf that almost killed her ended up with a hole in its neck. But this maneuver was noticed by the mutant tiger, who had already identified Sam as his next target and was already rushing to finish him off. The tiger was already hovering above him in the air when suddenly Chuck appeared in front of him, putting his shield forward. But any board was unlikely to be able to stop a mutant with potentially enormous power. The tiger's punch slams Chuck into a nearby rock, leaving a large dent behind him. Sam decides to use the old trick, and again with all his strength launches a steel ball towards the enemy. The tiger fails to dodge and, landing on his paws, looks at his opponent with a brutal look while a small abrasion from the ball is visible on his forehead. The main character is very frightened by this. The mutant's head turned out to be too strong. The attack with the ball did not kill him. He was just about to reach into his pocket again, but his opponent did not stop, and without giving him a second of extra time, the monster was already approaching him. But out of nowhere, powerful plant stems began to emerge from the ground, and they instantly twisted the mutant. Marie came to the aid of Sam using one of her genes. She tells her comrade to hurry up. The main character again takes out his balls and throws them as far as possible. The tiger begins to laugh, thinking that his enemy simply missed, but it was not Sam's mistake. He hoped that he could throw them as far as possible, and his plan succeeded. The balls were able to fly to the forest where additional traitor troops were hiding at that time. Annabelle's shelling suddenly stops and she realizes where her real target is. The bound mutant screams for her comrades to continue firing at her and not give her opportunities. But it's too late. The professor uses his power again and in quick bursts begins to shoot balls at his new target. This line of defense of the enemy is defeated. Annabelle's power is so powerful that even the crowns of perennial trees turned into splinters. The mutant breaks the vines that were holding him back and is already flying towards Sam, who is unable to find his bearings. But the tiger is stopped by a ball flying through his skull. The monster emits a loud, dying cry. The young man's savior turns out to be the same Professor Annabelle. All the mutants run away from her. Even celestial creatures are overtaken by karma, and the balls quickly knock them down. Help also comes to her from the air. The ships launch an attack on the remaining mutants. Looking up into the air, the commander feels a little lighter at the sight of their warships. One of the main traitor orders a retreat. The operation fails due to the fact that they were unable to finish off the girl. But John does not even think about letting go of the enemy. He is rapidly advancing towards him. The enemy commands his minions to execute the third emergency evacuation plan. Lined up in one line, the obedient soldiers suddenly raise their heads upward from the discharge that pierces them, and they all explode at the same time. At this moment, Annabelle's strength leaves her, and having lost consciousness, she begins to fly down. Sam notices this, and gathering all his speed, manages to catch the professor, who was about to come into contact with the ground. Looking at the exhausted girl in his arms, the young man feels calm. Fortunately, he managed to catch her. John, emerging from the smoke, wonders how he could allow his subordinates to blow himself up in order to escape the soldiers of his army, warned the commander that they are beginning to pursue the enemy. But the commander stops them and orders them to build a fortification and take care of the wounded. At the beginning of this operation, John was confident that everything would be successful, but everything went wrong. After a little time on the hospital couch, Chuck finally comes to his senses. He tries to get up, but his whole body hurts like hell. Sam recommends that he not move, but just lie down. Chuck goes back to bed and wants to find out what happened to their enemy. The main character says that with their joint efforts, they were able to send the enemy to flight. These words calmed the student. He already thought that his life was over, and Chuck didn't want to die as a virgin. Sam says that his friend escaped with minor injuries, but he was prescribed rest for the next 3 months. The young man is glad that he at least survived. The main character mentions that if it were not for teacher Annabelle, the circumstances would have been much more tragic. The last thing Chuck remembers is how the snipers pinned her down. Sam begins to tell in more detail how things went further, but he is interrupted by Marie running into the first aid station. The girl reports that Professor Annabelle has woken up and calls Sam Levins to her. They enter her room and Marie reports that she fulfilled the request and brought Sam here. The girl immediately decides to clarify whether he caught her. The young man smiles and replies that it all just happened by itself. She is also interested to know if he may also have removed the blood on her body. This immediately makes the young student blush. Marie, standing nearby, giggles and says that it was she who cleaned up the blood and changed her clothes. Annabelle throws off her blanket and asks to be taken away as she needs to talk to the commander. Sam quickly runs up to the bed and, taking the professor by the hand, wants to help her get up, but does not meet with a positive reaction. Behind him, Marie laughs again and says that she would rather help the teacher get there. The young man burns with shame and quickly removes his hands from Annabelle. At the same time, the traitor roast is being electrocuted. Despite the pain, he screams for them to continue and not stop. Annabelle enters the room with Marie and Sam. John inquires about the professor's well-being. The girl reports that she is feeling better and she thanks them for their care. And besides this, she asks if there are any results. John says that no amount of torture or drugs forced Ruse to speak, and his neighbors said that his family disappeared a few days ago. Apparently, he thought of everything. Annabelle wants to know what he will do about it, to which the commander believes that the traitor should be brought to a military court. Mr. Morans reports that the enemies made a technological breakthrough. The transmitters they removed almost immediately turned off, and now they are ordinary prosthetics that they cannot present as evidence in court. Roast lets out a loud laugh, saying that they are accusing an innocent man. The man will not admit to anything and will wait for trial, and he also promises that Sam Levins will answer for everything. Annabelle asks the commander if wartime rules are still in effect, and John replies that after the attack, he gave permission to accept a military situation. The professor thinks that there will be another attack soon, and they would do well to intensify the interrogation of the spy right now. The commander unconditionally agrees with her and orders the immediate use of unconventional means against the spy during interrogation. Hearing this, Roast begins to shout that they have no right to do this, and when he sees Annabelle approaching him, he begins to shout that he will tell everything and answer all questions. The girl already understands that most likely he did not leave any traces, and his accomplice already know that he was captured, so now he is of no value. She uses her abilities on him, and Roast's body slowly begins to twist into a kind of knot. Annabelle admits that most of all in the world she hates traitors. The traitor begins to emit death rattles when suddenly Commander John, with a quick movement, strikes the enemy's throat with a dagger. The commander admits that he does not want her to take on this burden. He himself has already claimed many lives. Mr. Morris orders it to be recorded that the interrogation lasted 5 minutes. Then he notices Sam and says that he showed himself well and everyone here is indebted to him. John notes that first the young man was able to find the pursuer as well as find out the identity of the spy. The main character, not knowing how to respond to such praise, simply gives out the stock phrase that it is his duty. Walking along the street at night, Marie decides to ask the professor a question: why the traitor was not shot on the spot. Annabelle explains that in the future they will understand that there are certain laws, and sometimes bad people understand them better than good people. She also explains that the commander called her for a reason. She and he are in different camps, and if he writes in the report about her presence, Then the higher-ups would have more confidence to lie low. Sam and Marie realized with horror that their enemies have foreseen everything, and it was all a trick. Annabelle says that the real world is completely different from the world they used to know. It is full of lies and deceit, in which enemies are everywhere. Only by working hard will they be able to survive in the Gene era. And the first lesson that the guys must learn is the ability to protect themselves. The convoy of equipment accompanied by air continues on its way. Marie believes that if they were accompanied by air forces, the enemies would definitely not dare to attack. But Sam reminds her that these are the guards of other schools that have just been liberated and flew here. Chuck, lying on the couch and eating a corn dog, argues that yesterday's guy managing the land is a real devil. He almost destroyed the entire convoy. Even the commander could not catch him. Annabelle joins the conversation and says that all the enemy's actions were clearly planned, so they attacked them with the help of the owner of earthly genes. She also notes that Marie Sank has the ability to control plants and radiation, and if it weren't for the plants on the battlefield, she would hardly have been able to contain that mutant, so she and Sam were very lucky. The student decides to ask what their professor's rank is. Annabelle believes that now they can already know that she is a permanently changed C rank. Sam is surprised to hear this news. It turns out that with an S rank you can be a professor at K-Genetics University. The girl adds that as for the transcendental type, the professor must at least have a complete transformation. However, the requirements for the hidden type are relatively small for those who have special abilities. An exception can be made. Marie does not lag behind the teacher and wants to find out her abilities, but Annabelle only advises in the future not to reveal her abilities to others. This will guarantee that they will live much longer. She tells us to never forget about this, and everyone answers in unison that they understood her. But there is a small discrepancy. Sam reminds that after enrolling they must report their genetic data. He wants to know if this will be a problem. But Annabelle hastens to reassure them because their data will have a very high level of confidentiality. A large metropolis finally appeared outside the window. The guys, despite all the difficulties, were able to get to Kyoto. The guys see flying skateboards outside the window that cost about $1 million and begin to dream of the same ones. Meth at this moment mocks his classmates, calling them a bunch of sheep who have never seen anything in the world. Chuck decides to approach Sam and ask if he thinks May Sank likes him because yesterday she literally didn't leave his side. The young man begins to refuse, and at this moment the girl just decides to sit down with the guys, driving Sam into even greater embarrassment. The cars finally reach Keir University, and the loudspeaker immediately announces that students can take their thing and leave the vehicle. It is also loudly announced that the entrance test will be held tomorrow. Chuck is sure that in his current state, he will definitely not pass, and he will be immediately expelled. Sam offers to find out if he will be allowed to take this test later. How lucky it was that paramedics were already heading towards them, and when they saw Chuck, they ordered him to go with them since in the near future he would be released from any activities. The young man cannot believe his luck, and decides just in case to find out if it is free. And the answer pleases him even more, because for this period, all his expenses are covered by the university. Despite his diagnosis, he surprisingly quickly jumps onto the bed and is ready to go for treatment. Marie Wheelie asks Sam what is happening to their comrade, but the hero only replies that their comrade was happy that he will be eating for free for a month. Finally, the main character gets to his room during this time. So much has happened, and he is pretty tired. He immediately starts thinking about training, but he can't take that risk right now. Although his parents told him not to worry about money, progress in training would come at a cost. If he gets a grade of C in tomorrow's test, he will be rewarded with 20 F-rank energy capsules, roughly speaking. If you count in money, it will be more than his father's salary, but even if so, subsequent capsules will cost him just as much. At the moment, he has only 2 problems: money and supplements. Tomorrow he must try to achieve C rank. He needs to open at least 20 gene points. He is still missing 2. If he can break through today, then almost 1/3 of the entire year's training costs will be solved. This time his left hand will also be able to throw soybeans. In the morning, exhausted from yesterday's training, he wakes up on the floor to a knock on his door. Getting up and opening the door, he discovers that Professor Annabelle has visited him. She doesn't stand on ceremony. She immediately walks inside without an invitation and orders Sam to close the door. The girl also interrupts him and asks him not to look in her direction. She puts a piece of paper with words on his desk and asks him to focus and read what is written. They're using his telepathic ability. He reads that the piece of paper contains the number of kilograms of apples and their price per unit. Annabelle says that this is enough and asks him to put on his pants, Sam agrees, although he thinks to himself that she herself was stealing here and is now giving orders. At the same second, an older student named Sasha Finey bursts into the room she is here to raise all the fanders. But she comes across a picture where a freshman is pulling on his pants, and a rather beautiful girl is standing next to him. This makes the whole situation quite awkward, and Sasha hurries to leave as quickly as possible. Sam is shocked by everything that is happening, but the professor doesn't care about all these teenage habits. She wants to know how many base points he has already awakened. He admits that he has opened 20 points so far and wants to find out if he has a chance of getting a C rank. The teacher assures him that if he tries hard, he can reach C rank, but she is here to tell him something important. The professor advises him that when the time comes to undergo testing, she advises him not to show his full strength. Seeing the silent question in his eyes, the teacher invites him to guess where his telepathy can be used. Sam has an idea that his skill could be useful in surveillance. Annabelle is sure that this is the ideal option, and she is also convinced that if everyone finds out about this, he will be drawn into all the internal wars and intrigues of their universities. Of course, he can ignore her instructions and show strength left and right, but Sam says that he understands everything and wants to find out whether he should hide all his strength. She recommends not showing at least half of it. Besides, he studies at the faculty of the hidden type, and therefore completely switched under her name. Annabelle wants to know if this state of affairs suits him, to which she receives a positive answer. Since he is satisfied with everything, the professor allows him to sign the report. He sees that he needs to sign a paper stating that he neutralized the enemy during an enemy attack. Sam turns to Annabelle because he has nothing to do with it. It was she who killed the tiger. But the teacher tells him that without him, nothing would have worked out for her, so this is his merit. In addition, the association will give him a good monetary reward. The young man decides to sign the report because the extra money won't hurt him now. They finish here, and Annabelle says that she and Chuck should go take the test. But the main character is a little perplexed because his friend is now undergoing treatment. At the same time, leaning his ear to the door, Sasha tries to hear what they are talking about. Hearing footsteps approaching the door, he quietly jumps to the side and pretends that he is just wandering along the corridor. Sam follows Annabelle out of the room, and seeing Sasha says that he is ready to go. Sasha grabs him by the shoulders and calls the young man cool because he spent the night with the Ice Queen goddess of the faculty. He wants to know how he managed it. Sam tries to explain to him that he understood everything wrong. She only came to him so that he would sign the documents. He continues to not believe the freshman because he and she were the only two here. The main character says that now, unfortunately, his neighbor is in the hospital. This news puts Sasha into even greater shock. He thinks that Sam specifically sent his friend to the hospital to stay with the beauty, and already considers him a real alpha male. The young man understands that he cannot allow this crazy talker to say such things. Otherwise, rumors will quickly spread about him. He must somehow be forced to remain silent. Sam invites Sasha to reveal his secret of seduction and make a bet, to which the guy immediately agrees. The bet is that with his right hand, he will throw a metal ball at Sasha. If he dodges, then so be it, he will reveal the truth. But if not, then he will never tell anyone about what he saw. Sasha agrees, and they take positions. The senior student has speed beyond his reaction, and he is confident of his victory. But Sam doesn't give him too much time to think and throws the first ball at him. Sasha barely managed to jump away from the first one, but the second ball landed right on his cheek. The senior student immediately begins to accuse Sam of being a swindler. After all, they only agreed on one ball, and how could they throw with their left hand? The main character reminds that no one said that it was impossible, and if you look closely, it's all one ball. Looking at the floor, Sasha notices that one half of a metal ball lies nearby. Sam divided it into two parts, and therefore technically he did not violate anything, so he won. Well, a dispute is a dispute, and Sasha promises that this topic will not be mentioned again. And the main character was once again convinced that yesterday's training was not in vain, and now the left hand is in no way inferior to the right. She and Sasha to come to the test center, and then they each go about their own business. Sam easily goes to the office he needs, since the Asian class does not receive special attention. There was no queue here. The employee says that the results of his blood sampling showed that in total, he has already awakened 20 gene base points. According to the rules, he can now pass to a low C rank. She also adds that since he has a telepathic skill, he should be tested on a special device, and if his abilities show up well, he will be given an average C rank. Leaving his office, his only concern was how to get a high score when testing the power of telepathy without attracting a lot of attention. Entering the testing room, he sees how one of the students is very tense and tries to find out what is in the dark box opposite him. Seeing how another student is being graded, Sam realizes that if he can move up 2 grades like the previous student, then that will be enough. Applying his skill, he understands what is the optimal distance and clarity he needs to measure. The hero will control his distance to get a good score and make sure that he is given an average C rank. The score is not particularly high and will not attract attention. Sam notices one of the inspectors looking at him, and a shiver runs down his spine. Has he really already been figured out? He pretends that his eyes suddenly began to itch in order to divert suspicion from himself. He is called for testing and asked to describe the object that he feels inside the box. In the cube, he senses several objects at once. His maximum distance was 3 m and 24 hundredths of a meter. Previously, he could only see up to 3 1200ths of a meter. His limit increased by 12 centimeters. It turns out that in a few days, his ability increased. If he shows them all his strength, he will definitely get the best score. But he doesn't want to attract attention because he still wants to live. As a result, for the judges, he was able to see bread, raw meat, coffee beans in a cup and a half feet in hamburger. The distance was about 1 6300ths of a meter. As a result, he is given a low C rank and his telepathy ability is assessed as normal. Unexpectedly for the hero, the teacher takes him out of the office, introduces himself as an assistant professor at the Faculty of Mental Telepathy named Jean Paul, and invites Sam to transfer to him since his telepathy is impressive. This whole situation is straining the young man because he made it clear that his abilities are ordinary. Paul L refuses Jean, citing the fact that he has already chosen the faculty of audition. The teacher keeps up with him and begins to say how much he can get if he chooses his department. Sasha, passing by having heard about special quotas for recruiting and increasing ranks, begins to get angry that everything is going to Sam again. This makes the main character think this is too tempting an offer. If his rank rises, it will not only reduce the burden on his family, but will even help him in the future. But he has a hidden type, just like Professor Annabelle, so his strength is clearly more in that direction. The right direction is most important, so he refuses the offer, surprising Sasha. In addition, Professor Jean, having learned that Annabelle was Sam's teacher, immediately began to behave strangely, began to shake a little, and drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. But after a while he regained his normal appearance and continued to insist that Sam definitely needed to think more, and the faculty would be waiting for him. Seeing these strange mood swings, he thanks the professor and they say goodbye. Walking along the corridor with Sasha, the hero wants to find out from him whether his miracle's power of throwing beans is pushing him to increase his rank. After all, his ability can be attributed to the transcendental type. The assessment of the transcendental is, after all, slightly higher than the secretive. Sasha is confused by his questions about whether the first Vash really decided to compete with him. He advises Sam to just forget about his crazy ideas. The main character heads further to test the strength of his palm, and it's his turn. He approaches the entrance and the system begins to scan him to make sure that it is Sam Levins. Suddenly, a bunch of notifications about unread messages start to arrive on his watch. He decides to look at them after he passes the test, because he has been waiting in line for an hour. At this moment, unexpectedly for everyone in the queue, they begin to push people aside. Some big guy orders everyone to make way for him because he has powers of middle E rank. Skirmish begins between those who agree to skip it and those who consider it impermissible. In general, public facilities and services are given priority to those with high authority. If a person with low authority prevents a person with high authority from doing something, he will be arrested and convicted. Regular civilians typically have F-rank credentials, and if they want to advance to the highest, which is a rank, they need to upgrade their skills, which takes a very long time. In a university where all students have F-rank credentials, a person with E-rank credentials is demolished by God, not to mention the average E rank. Sam reasons that either this guy is very strong and received 50 merit points with his abilities, or he inherited his family's privileges. Having dispersed the entire line, the brute gets to him and tells him to move again, mentioning his E rank. Hearing that Sam has already confirmed his turn and will not give in to him, the big man's tower is torn off, and he begins to scream and orders the hero to get out of here immediately. The main character asks the teacher how many minutes he has left before his turn. He is told that he is next in order, and the wait will be approximately 3 to 5 minutes. The bully is not going to tolerate this, and having lifted Sam off the ground, he already wants to smack him in the face. But the young man stops his fist. Apparently, the bully decided that he was so easy to intimidate. He bends his fist forcefully in the opposite direction so that a loud crunch of bones can be heard. The bully immediately lets him go and tries to feel his sore arm. He cannot stand such public humiliation and standing up swings his good arm at Sam. The reaction does not fail the main character, and he notices the opponent's unprotected groin and shoots him a free kick. Everyone who saw this also felt pain in the groin area, and the bully fell to his knees in pain in front of Sam. His henchmen decide to answer for their leader and decide to attack the young man. Before the guys had time to show all their hidden techniques, the main character had already taken out his famous metal balls and launched them into the necks of his opponents. So all 4 hooligans were defeated by the main character and were now lying on the floor groaning in pain. Sasha, watching from the queue, begins to have another attack of envy because how the first one managed to defeat the 4 of them who also had a high rank. Sam asks the bullies if they're still going to fight because next time he will throw metal balls in the direction of their eyes and then their heads. The students have already filmed this entire scene on their phones, and now this video is gaining popularity on the internet. Sam already suspects that he is finished. He hasn't been very successful at becoming invisible. Holding on to his belongings, the bully gets up and tries to threaten everyone who is filming this that they will be in trouble and he will settle personal scores with Sam. Sasha decides to come up and hold his comrade, saying that people from the discipline department will soon arrive here. Sam is not afraid of accusations against him, since there is evidence on video surveillance cameras that he was attacked first and he was only defending himself. The comrade is worried that, from the point of view of the department, all 4 were knocked down, and Sam was left without a single scratch. Even if he is telling the truth, he will also receive punishment, although not serious. The hero still doesn't understand what he did, to which Sasha explodes, and says that this bully Gilbert Mulligan has considerable powers, and the fact that he did not let a person of a rank above him pass is punishable by law. The most severe punishment that can be imposed on him is expulsion and compensation for medical expenses. Sam thanks him for the information and decides to look at the unread messages. But since such a case occurs, he decides not to read them further, but simply confirm all the acts sent to him at once. From the messages, it is clear that he is being promoted to a low-ranking position, and that money transfers are pouring in from various foundations. Sasha watches as a creepy smile appears on his friend's face. The senior student also decides to ease Sam's situation a little and offers to help Gilbert escort him to the first aid station and dissuade him from making a mountain out of a molehill in this situation. He says that he will forget about this if Sasha apologizes to them all on her knees and pays everyone moral damages. Sam approaches them and thanks the young man for his help, but he assures that he is able to solve his problems himself. He suggests that Gilbert tell the department everything but not blame him for not giving him a chance. Mr. Mulligan looks down on his rival and says that Sam will regret his words. A representative of the department scolds the guys because they have not yet passed all the entrance tests, but have already violated the rules and now they will be punished. He orders to send everyone to the department and interrogate everyone to also take video from surveillance cameras and restore the event to interview witnesses, students, and teachers. Gilbert does not miss the opportunity to show off his EE rank here. Either he tells how he simply asked to give way to him, but they refused him, and in addition they attacked him. The inspector makes sure that his rank is genuine, and in this case, he really has the authority. He can tell everything in his own words, and he will not be interrogated. Gilbert is jubilant and asks Sam if he has any courage left. But the young man puts on a calm face, turns to the representative, and mentions that he has the authority of a LD rank, who also takes advantage. Gilbert begins to laugh hysterically, trying to catch his rival in a lie. The representative himself doubts that a freshman can have a low D rank. This is impossible. He himself worked for many years to get the credentials to a high E rank, and for a low D rank, hundreds of points are needed. After checking the data, the representative confirms that Sam Levins is not lying, but has a low D rank. He will now be asked to write a report and send it to the discipline department, and is also in contact if he has problems. Gilbert can't believe his ears that this all turned out to be true. The department representative introduces himself to students as Tim Shah and asks everyone to be mindful of following discipline rules. The hooligans leave along with representatives of the discipline department, having clearly lost this war. The teacher from the screen asks everyone to stop making noise and declares that they will start the assessment again. Sam is finally able to pass the test, and the observer even rewards him for the work he has done. In the next test, the teachers took care of the young man. Because they mistook him for a descendant of heroes, they even turned a blind eye to the fact that he was late for taking the test. After passing the test, Sam heads to the registration and payment office where the employee says that his average grade is average, C rank. His tuition is $116,000 a year, and the cost of training materials is $11,000. Also, since he has the authority of a low D rank according to regulations, Sam receives a 5% discount, and now his payment amount is $16,200. In the hall behind the protagonist, they begin to whisper that perhaps this is the young man who fought back against Gilbert Mulligan. Sam hears these conversations and does not like that he's mistaken for a descendant, some kind of hero. The employee finishes and tells the main character that the reception procedure was successful. Having received the documents, he sees a message on his watch from teacher Annabelle. She invites him to come to her at the Genetics Research Institute. This was just right for the young man. He wanted to thank her for the special quota for recruiting students which raised his rank. Entering the professor's office, Annabelle invites Sam to sit down. There are 3 reasons why she called him to her, but the young man ignores everything because he cannot take his eyes off the girl. Noticing his gaze on her, she threatens to transfer him to the insight class. Mr. Levins admits that she is so beautiful and temperamental that if he looks at her for a long time, he might lose consciousness. Hearing his words, she just sighed deeply because what can one take from a young guy? Annabelle repeats that there are 3 reasons, the first of which the mayor's defense command sent a letter of apology and asked to give it to him. Sam doesn't understand the point of sending him an apology. They should have apologized to the injured students and soldiers, not to him. The second news is that he is now an intern at Research Institute number 14 and will mainly be entrusted with some tasks. As a bonus, he will be given E rank energy capsules every month. She wants to know if Sam has any objections. The main character has no objections to this with or without bonuses. The main thing is that he learns to use his powers. The third news concerns his training and choice, whether he knows what is most important for entering the Hidden Institute. To be precise for this, there must be mental strength, and the use of any of their abilities is based on mental strength. Moreover, it itself is a genetic ability. Annabelle takes out metal balls and throwing them makes them fly throughout the office. But there is a small peculiarity when flying. They do not touch anything. The teacher says that enough development of mental strength is not inferior to the unique abilities of an exceptional type. Human research has discovered countless secret cultivation methods, and their type's genetic base also has a secret method called inner vision. Going outside, he suspects that his teacher knew that he himself has inner vision. She also mentioned that anyone who is able to sense the smallest things has inner vision. However, only a small number of genetically modified people and gradually named mutants are able to possess. Its students using this unique method discover an average of 15 gene base points, but they can be either useful or useless, plus there are various side effects. This news makes Sam a little happy because in fact everything depends on luck. Annabelle corrects him, saying that this is not entirely true before it could be compared to playing roulette. But after 100 years, humanity has developed safer methods of awakening genes. The main character also wants to find out if their type has something else besides internal vision. The professor claims that unlike others, they have a greater chance of discovering new genes. The girl also reminds that full development requires the formation of a series of chains of genetic abilities. Sam also wonders what else inner vision is capable of besides the new genes they awaken. Annabelle says inner vision has several functions, but other than activating new genes, there isn't much to it. The main character thinks that his inner vision is different from others. The teacher gave him these training methods to practice. Walking towards his room in the corridor, he again bumps into his now comrade Sasha. He comes into the room with him to talk about something while the young man is unpacking his purchases. He notes that their rooms are much better than their old ones. Sam hands him a can of cola and says that Sasha can speak directly to him as it turns out they contacted Sasha, introduced the Megan family, and they asked for all the problems to go away. They also talked to Sasha's father, and now he has no opportunity to refuse them. The Mulligan family enjoys authority in government circles in Koto. The young man asks Sam not to worry, because they will not get to their university. He is only infuriated by the fact that they had the impudence to say something to his father. Also, there is not exactly enmity between their family, because no matter how you look at it, the Megan family has enemies all over the world. Sasha just wants his comrade to be as careful as possible with them. Bad thoughts immediately enter the main character's head about what will happen if he tries to chew this family apart. Sasha thinks that if he puts pressure on them, they could be expelled. There is a high probability that the discipline department will simply take them under supervision. Sam suspects that it was they who sent his comrade to this conversation so that he would soften up, and they would not be expelled at his request. This turns out to be true, but Sasha swears that he just wants no one to get into trouble, and on top of all this, he gives Sam a card with a lot of money, which the Mulligan family presented as an apology. For such a huge sum, all he needs to do is write that there was a small fight among students and not a violation of his authority. With that, they decided he escorts Sasha to the door and he thanks him and apologizes for the trouble. Having slammed the door, he is left alone with his huge capital. With 8 or 10 of his classmates, he would instantly become rich. He decides now is the time to try the workouts Annabelle recommended to him. Having found a meditation that suits him, he makes himself comfortable on the couch and begins it. Only his concentration is disrupted by thoughts of a beautiful goddess named Annabelle. He remembers how majestic she looked on the battlefield. Just as he wanted to concentrate again, a new message arrived on his watch from Mar Sank. She said that she had already checked into the hostel and invited him to her place, mentioning that she lived with a very beautiful neighbor. And now again, youthful impulses excite Sam's heart. How strong neighbor Marie must be. These thoughts do not leave his head. No matter how much he wants, he is no longer able to return to training today. Gilbert, having finished talking on the phone, reports to his colleague that all issues have been resolved and they will not leave. One of the bullies wants to know if they will just forget about this incident, but Gilbert's father made it clear that they should call it a day. Another of his comrades says that Sam is studying at the Faculty of Erudition and they are at the Beyond. They have a fairly small chance of meeting him and taking revenge. But one of the hooligans does not calm down, and he has a plan brewing to take revenge on him without doing anything to Sam. All they need to do is lift their fingers. He proposes to use the internet and make all the kids from the exorbitant university hates Sam Levins so much so that he walks without raising his head. The second day at the university began walking down the street with full bags of food. The main character thinks that maybe Gilbert is not so bad. Without his generosity, he would hardly have been able to buy so much. On the way, he decides to check the news and to his surprise stumbles upon angry posts about himself. Sam realizes that someone definitely built this. It seems that they are trying to provoke him into a conflict between him and the Transcendental University. But the young man decides not to care about all this because he has an opening ceremony ahead. Crowds of students have already gathered in the square, and the solemn speech begins, in which every student admitted to this university is called Heaven's Chosen Ones, saying that they have the ability to think independently. This speech was given by the rector of the university named Adore Woe. He wants to end his speech colorfully, so he releases purple lightning into the sky. With one snap of his finger, Mr. Wood makes lightning thunder and clouds thicken. From such impending bad weather, all students' ears begin to block. Then the lightning abruptly disappears somewhere, and the students see again a clear sky with no signs of an approaching hurricane. One of the students notices that there is still something in the sky and shouts for everyone to pay attention to it. At that moment, a man descends from the sky like lightning, and everyone for some reason immediately takes him for Superman and begins to chant. But it just turns out to be their rector named Tom, even if he is outrageous, but today he agrees to be a Superman for the students. As the crowd cheers, Rector Ador declares the ceremony over. Here comes the time of long school days in the first couple of this year. A teacher named Seos North introduces himself to his new students. For the next couple of years, he will teach them spiritual power training, the basics of the hidden type theory, and the basic practices of the hidden type. He also notes the horn on his head, which has already attracted the attention of the students. Seos says that this is a consequence of an error during training, and if among the students there are those who want to get a pair of horns, then he allows them to sleep on the pairs. From his speech, Sam understands what Annabelle's teacher was saying about useless genes at the base point. Having said the preface, the teacher suggests starting today's lesson and orders the assistants to distribute the teaching materials. Suze reminds them that they should all know that spiritual power is core to the hidden type. Now, they will begin the first lesson on her training pointing to the flask. He tells that this technology is needed to accumulate and test this power in the initial and middle stages. The material in the bottle is extremely rare. He orders everyone to pick up the instrument and focus on it, saying that they must give it their all, because this is the only way they can improve their spiritual power. First of all, you should focus your gaze inside the bottle, and then feel with all your might what is inside it. Suze reminds that the first time will be a little difficult. The main thing is not to worry, but to slowly pour in your spiritual strength. He just wanted to tell what would happen if he rushed in this matter when a loud explosion rang out across the entire audience. The bottle exploded right in the hands of Sam, who clearly did not imagine his first day of school this way. Cyrus takes the student to his office, treats his wounds, and asks how the man is feeling. Sam replies that everything is fine, and the teacher notes that he saw his name in the audition class magazine. Surprisingly, the professor is pleased with his result. The first pair, and he has already blown up the flask, which is already quite talented. He also says that Sam would be better off with 20 gamstones instead of 1 or 5 gamstones. The same story repeats with Cyrus as with the other teacher. He again offers a special quota so that Sam goes to him. But as before, the young man remains faithful to Professor Annabelle and refuses the teacher's offer, which clearly does not please Severus. Although this does not stop him, and he selflessly gives Sam information about unique methods of an exceptional type. Discuss all the issues and making sure that everything is in order, they decide to return to the classroom. Meanwhile, heated discussions are taking place in the class about what caused the explosion and what the teacher is now doing with the careless student. Sam enters the classroom and, returning to his seat, sighs sadly, because initially he wanted to live an inconspicuous life, and now he has gotten himself into something again. Cyrus also returns to his place and says that the practical part of the lesson will now begin. For this, he calls his assistant. In a fashionable manner, the man greets everyone and says that his name is Dan Schneid. He is a first year of the Transcendental Type Speed class. Currently, he has already opened 3 chains of genetic abilities and has an E rank. The group immediately begins to whisper and say that at such an early age this is already incredible. Cyrus wants to use an example to explain to students the main disadvantage of the hidden type and asks if anyone wants to become Dan's opponent. He warns that it will just be a little sparring and he might as well wear protective equipment. But to everyone's surprise, Dan says that he has only one condition: Sam Levin spar with him. The teacher is interested in why the choice fell on this particular student, and besides combat practice, is carried out voluntarily. Dan admits that since such a strong student appeared in the faculty of audition this year, he really wants to conduct a practical lesson with him. Sam is under pressure from all sides because if he doesn't come out to spar, then everyone will consider him just a coward, but to everyone's surprise, one of the students also volunteers to try to practice. The young man introduces himself as Frank G, and he is the owner of 2 chains of genetic abilities of an exceptional type. Dan agrees to feed this guy first. He asks if the teacher agrees to their sparring. Severus agrees, and pressing a button on the remote control, they find themselves in an impromptu ring. He warns competitors not to overdo it, even in exhibition sparring. You can get injured, so he wants them to be careful. The report is in, and the fight is declared open. Frank warns that he has quite powerful fire, and his opponent needs to be careful, but it looks like he should have been more careful because Dan very quickly knocks his opponent down. To the surprise of the students, the fireball that Frank had been holding at the ready flew out of the ring, but Professor Seuss orders not to panic and puts out the fire. Dan, sitting aside his opponent, says that in a real fight he would already be dead. Frank wants to try again. They go to the corners again, and Dan says that this time he will give him 1 second to attack because the exceptional type is very troublesome in the attack. Having learned from his past mistakes, Frank realizes that he first needs to step back. The second round has begun. Mr. G keeps his distance and waits for his opponent to decide to attack because then he will face a retaliatory blow. This time the young man manages to dodge the enemy attack for a short time. But unfortunately, everything ends just like in the first round. Dan turns out to be faster and wins again. Cyrus thanks Frank for his participation and notes that using the example of this battle, they could observe what the main weakness of the hidden type is. The teacher invites others to try themselves in a duel, but Dan remembers that he never sparred with Sam Levinson. Sam decides that since his classmate says wish like that, he wouldn't mind practicing with him too. Going down the steps, the hero thinks that this fight would have happened anyway. There is no point in hiding now. He will teach this Dan a lesson in front of everyone. Let them know that it is better not to mess with him while walking upstairs. Frank decides to warn Sam to keep his distance and mentions that his left leg is weaker than his right. While his opponent is warming up in the ring, Dan decides to record their fight on camera. Sam, noticing this, was only happy so he could see the in and outs of their battle. The fighters take their positions and the next round is declared open. Dan attacks first. Sam realizes that Frank was not lying about the enemy's speed. He is moving very quickly. But suddenly, before the enemy wanted to hit Sam, he seemed to disappear into thin air. An object resembling a pyramid hovered in the air for a second, and while Dan hesitated, it crashed right on his head. Having risen, the enemy cannot understand what it was, perhaps a spiritual incarnation, but do first student really study this? Watching the fight, Saris realizes that even though the technique was done roughly, Sam Levins in his eyes is becoming a real genius. But Dan does not sleep and, flying towards the enemy, grabs his hand and kicks him in the face. Mr. Schneider does not hesitate and returns to his starting position in one jump. This is done to gain momentum again and deliver the finishing blow. Despite the fact that Sam, using telepathy, clearly sees all of Dan's attacks, his body is not able to keep up with his reaction. The hero already understands that he will have to spend all his free time on training. Despite Dan's variety of techniques, his telepathy can still pick up the trajectory of his movements. Sam launches a spiritual embodiment at him again. The enemy mocks because he is sure that now he will not fall for this trick. But having dodged once, he did not expect that the blow would come from behind. And again, his face would be crumpled. Jumping high into the air, Dan wants to throw a powerful punch, but Sam blocks. It with hatred boiling in him, he continues to kick with all his might, and finally breaks through the enemy's defense. Sam flies to the side and hits his head on the arena dome. But even this is not enough for his opponent, and he again hovers over him and delivers the decisive blow. Sam turns out to be the loser, and Souse hurries to stop the fight as soon as possible, saying that Dan has gone too far. Dissatisfied exclamations are heard in the audience. They do not like the cruelty shown by Mr. Schneider. Dan notes that the fight comes first, and then the training, because they are genetically modified people. They will face a lot of dangers, so you always need to give your best. Sam, who woke up, also thinks so, but is his opponent strong enough? The young man says that if he has enough courage, he can see his opponent to the end. Only this time he would actually try his best to knock him down. Sam agrees to a rematch, but decides to check with the teacher. If this is combat training, then he can use all his abilities. Teacher Saris turns out to be not against the fight and gives the go-ahead, and Sam wants to know if in this case he can use his special ability. Dan just grins in response and says that there is no problem. The main character already feels that superiority is on his side and asks the audience for a couple of metal balls since he forgot his own at home. This comes as a surprise to classmates. Some think that the tone will use a bomb launcher. Marie, sitting with one of her classmates named Lily, asks to lend her necklace, to which she unconditionally takes off and gives away the jewelry. The girl is very grateful to her for this. Miss Sank runs up to the arena and hands Sam 3 pearls. The young man says that this should be enough for him. He warns his opponent that he has already spared him twice, but if this time they really fight to the fullest, then he should be more careful. But behind this mask of confidence, Sam actually fears that Dan's speed is too fast, and there is a good chance that the enemy will dodge his balls, so he must find a way to increase his throwing. Speed Dan is already in position and also wishes his opponent to be more attentive. He takes off and rushes at Sam, shouting that he will beat him until his opponent gets up. At this moment, a spiritual embodiment is already flying towards him, aiming to cause damage to the enemy. But Dan manages to get his bearings and breaks his spiritual cone with a powerful blow, saying that now it won't work. Sam doesn't give up this time. He doesn't waste time on trifles. He's already creating a lot of cones. But even this is not a hindrance to the opponent. He again destroys each of the projectiles launched at him. In response to Dan's exclamations that he wonders how much longer his enemy will last, Sam releases another batch of charges. Mr. Schneider dodges the blows again, but he understands that sooner or later these cones will hit him, so he needs to somehow get out of this circle. He wants to win some space for himself, and therefore pushing off from the ground soars into the air, now being as he thinks in a more advantageous position. He shouts that Sam will not fool him. The young man grins and takes out his 3 treasured balls and is already preparing to load them. Undoubtedly, Dan is very fast for a prohibitive type, but without support, he cannot be so nimble. The enemy realizes with horror that his enemy deliberately directed the cones along such a trajectory. Sam has already collected enough energy, and concentrating the power of his hand, he releases all 3 balls into flight. Dan is so unlucky that one of the balls flies directly into his groin with ultrasonic force. The enemy turns out to be knocked out and now languishing in pain holds onto his bells. The classmates begin to applaud and shout about how beautiful Sam made the teaching assistant. Seus is not amused at this time. He conveys a message to the ambulance so that they urgently come in since there is a student with a serious injury who may need surgery. The doctors quickly arrived and placed the victim on a gurney, making a preliminary diagnosis: a sprained ligament. The meniscus and the sovial membrane were seriously damaged. The rest will be known after the operation, but it is believed that even the operation can leave consequences. The medical worker asks Severus how it all happened. The teacher covers his face with his hand and replies that first of all everything possible must be done to cure the student, and he will write a report on the incident later. The doctors agree and take the victim away. Frank decides to approach Sam, who is sitting at his desk, and find out if he regrets that he beat Dan up, but the young man doesn't regret it at all. If he had given in, he would now have ended up on a stretcher. Susan informs the audience that there were some unexpected incidents in today's lesson, but it was quite educational. He believes that this should not be given much importance since they are freshmen, and after the next 3 months, any serious injuries will become a daily routine for them. And of course, their university provides professional medical care, so students don't have to worry. The teacher announces that the class is over and now he will send them homework. At the same time, students were glued to the screens of their tablets, where videos had already appeared of how an upstart from an out-of-this-or institute was beaten during a combat exercise. Sam is finally back in his room and can take a breather. During this day, people had already started making fun of him on the internet. Because of Gilbert's handout, the young man blew up the flask in a steam match, and the end was a duel with Dan Schneider. Suddenly, a notification from his roommate arrived on his watch. It turned out to be a list of house rules, which regulated how much and when to clean what is forbidden to wash in a machine, when you can bring guests, and who is not allowed under any circumstances. At the moment of reading this boring list, an unfamiliar young man entered the room, asking the hero from the threshold if he was Sam Levins. This young man turned out to be his roommate, a third-year student named Liam Assar. Sam says hello, and thinks to himself how handsome his neighbor is, who is also a university idol. Liam immediately says that if his neighbor does not agree with the rules, then they will need to go to the manager and change his room, but the main character turns out to agree to the conditions prescribed to him. Looking at his new neighbor, Liam notices that the young man looks rather shabby and wants to know if he is injured. Sam reluctantly reveals that he got hurt during combat practice today. The elder immediately interrupts him and points out to the hero that he looks like a squeeze lemon, and he is afraid that he will not survive even a 3-month period of protection. The main character remembers that teacher Sius mentioned something about a 3-month period. Liam decides to give his new neighbor some healing ointment and recommends using it when changing the bandage. The young man thanks him and asks him to tell him more about the 3-month period that he himself mentioned. Mr. Asser grins, folds his arms over his chest, and says that Sam really doesn't know anything. Every genetic evolution university encourages students to improve with each other. Kier University is no exception. Those who come out on top in the competition will receive more training resources. Every year, a list of the 100 best students comes out. First place is the Dragon. The top 10 are the Tigers. For each place, a separate reward is given. Sam is surprised to see a D-rank energy capsule because it's $100,000 out of the blue. Liam says that the so-called 3-month protection period means that the freshmen will not be bothered by competition for 3 months, but after 3 months, the competition will be completely open. But there are especially gifted guys like Sam who strive to break the rules of the university. The main character does not quite understand what they are talking about. The older neighbor says that every year, because of the competition, students get seriously injured, become disabled and expelled, and sometimes die. This is not uncommon. Heading towards the exit, Liam says goodbye that Sam has already become a target. So now no one is interested in his problems, and if he wants to survive, he must train properly. Left alone, the hero thinks about everything he heard. He assumed that it would be difficult to get along with the elder, but he never expected that Liam would be a man with a sharp tongue and a soft heart. But his words about the target worry Sam about how things could have turned out this way. At the very least, Gilbert and Dan have a grudge against him, but one way or another, these show-offs have already been filmed, and he was at least able to learn about their strength. All these thoughts give him the idea to look at the training methods that Master Saris gave him. Sam hopes that the methods will include skills such as affinity with metal. Finally, evening came, and the young man took a shower after such a busy day. Leaving the bathroom, he felt as if he had been reborn again. And he hears that the clock on his bed is starting to ring. Sasha is trying with him, having answered the call. A comrade's angry speeches came from the receiver, saying that he had seen posts on the internet with the crippled DN and wanted to know what Sam had managed to do again, while Sasha stated that the hero should contact the one who posted these videos on Network A and gives his number. The main character decides to go online and see what they write about him, and seeing how the whole story has been distorted to the point that he is threatening all the students of the prohibitive type and maiming people, Mr. Levins is shocked. With all the details simply left out to make him look bad, Sam decides to tell this senior that his posts are incomplete and that it is wrong. He contacts a student named Romeo Fritz, introduces himself to him, and informs him of his dissatisfaction. He wants the students to see the whole truth as it really was, to which the senior student asks if Sam wants to settle everything, and he announces a price of $500,000. If he gives him that amount, then Romeo will agree to change everything in the posts. After waiting a minute, the extortionist bursts into loud laughter and says that he is just joking. He would not dare to rob a poor student, and in general there is nothing wrong with his posts. Romeo sees no reason to change them. Sam, hearing this, tries to shame the senior student because Mr. Fritz is a public figure, and how can he think that it is right to spread false rumors? Romeo points out that Dan Schneid really wasn't mutilated by Sam, asks him to point out where the author lied and says that he's too busy and the call will. And they're having completed the call, Romeo leans back in his chair and laughs at how naive young people can be. Sam remains unhappy after such a tense conversation. His enemy turned out to be really cunning, his loopholes cannot be recorded. The hero comes up with the idea that he can try to complain about his work, but at the same time he understands that Romeo can continue to work on other conspiracies, and this way he will not get rid of the infection. But still some measures need to be taken, and Sam begins to get ready, thinking that since his opponent did not want to be kind, then he should not blame him for his rudeness. At such a late hour, he decided to go to the discipline department, entering the foyer and being greeted by the secretary. Just as he wanted to communicate his desire to write a complaint, the head of the department, Tim Scam, who was already familiar to him, entered the foyer to find out what was happening here. Sam reports that someone was using the university's website for blackmail and extortion. Tim confirms that these are very serious violations. He already roughly knows what the matter is, but now he needs to go to a meeting, and the head promises that after a while he will take up this matter. Mr. Scam orders the secretary to block Romeo Fritz's account first, and mentions that further punishment will be handed down after the meeting. By this time, an extraordinary meeting of the Kier University of Genetic Evolution had already begun. Rector Ador wants to know if everything is in place. He has reported that, with the exception of Tim Scam and several committees who have gone on assignments, everyone is here. The reason for their meeting today is two students. Sam Levins and Dan Schneider. Ador knows that everyone is already aware of the events and asks everyone to express their opinion. The deputy dean of Stormhold decided to speak out first. He believes that Sam acted extremely harshly with Dan crippling him, so Levinson needs to be given a serious punishment. Helia Schaffer, on the contrary, believes that this was an ordinary combat training, and Dan himself provoked the young man while also brutally attacking his opponent. Moreover, Sam restrained himself twice, and his contract was justified. Vice Recor. Tom repeats that the problem is not a counterattack, but that he crippled Dan. Deputy Information Department Denver believes that the young man should not be punished too harshly, but he certainly cannot be left without punishment. Salvatore Haynes believes that Sam Levins had bad intentions. The bad thing is that he took the fight tape because of this. They had a problem. So the Office of Academic Affairs believes that this young man should bear the main responsibility. Ador listened to all the deputies and managers, and now wants to find out what teacher SAS thinks about this. Sweating with excitement, he admits that he too is responsible for this incident because he did not follow their fight. Thier loses his temper and begins to shout at the professor because he has a huge responsibility, and after what happened, he did not reprimand Sam, but allowed the situation to develop further. In addition, he should have immediately contacted the information department of the Hidden Institute and posted the full video of the battle on the internet, but due to his negligence, such a commotion occurred. Ador thinks that Cirrus wanted to glorify the student of his institute, but first of all, he should support the students and not engage in conflicts for personal gain. The director also wants to know, after they finish, the opinion of his colleagues on what to do with Severus. Opinions are divided. Some believe that the teacher is to blame, but Sam should not go unpunished. Tom suggests giving them a warning for the future. Ador asks the question: if the students of their university do not want to resist the deliberate humiliation of their rivals, then why are they teaching? Then he bursts out with a speech that even if those students who resist are punished, will other students maintain the spirit of resistance in the face of powerful enemies of the future. The rector suggests that cease take on the main responsibility regarding other students, let the teachers of their respective faculties limit themselves to educational conversations. All those present fully agreed with his decision. Towards the end of the meeting, Tim approached Ador and brought him a completed full report on the incident. Having glanced over the report, the rector throws the tablet with it to Denver and asks him to look at it for himself because he did not expect that this could happen at their university. Ador says that a student named Romeo used his popularity to blackmail and extort money. 3 cases were confirmed, and the video itself is in the Denver Information Department. The head of the university offers Denver to go to the front instead of the director if he copes with his duties so poorly. Meanwhile, Romeo taunts Sam because the freshman thinks that if his number is blocked, he won't be able to do anything. Hearing knocks behind the door, he decided to go up and open it. A man appeared from behind the door, handing the senior student his ID. Having mentioned his name, the people introduced themselves as employees of a special department of the intelligence department. They had an order to arrest Romeo for extortion and blackmail, and they asked him to go with them. A scream is heard in one of the dorm rooms early in the morning. It turns out that all the videos that the students filmed were deleted, and they will now not be able to make money from it. The students notice they are notified that they could be prosecuted for the video and their use of blackmail and extortion. Professor Seos is removed from his position as vice dean, and the university states that it encourages rivalry among students so they can create strong heroes. That same morning, Sam continues to meditate and persistently train his genes. Having finished, he falls tiredly onto the bed. The last 36th base point of the first level has finally been opened. Usually it takes at least 6 months, but he did it in 4 weeks. Sam feels that although his spirit Yule power has not skyrocketed, but the intensity has increased significantly. He is confident that in the next battle against Dan or anyone else, his spiritual cone will not break so easily. Jumping up sharply, he decides to test his skills and see the progress of telepathy. He feels that while his range is about 6 m, it is more than his room. Sam tries to look a little further, and now he sees the older neighbor's room. Right now he is training. The young man can even see his martial arts books. But to his surprise, he feels Liam's gaze turned to him, and Sam clearly hears him being called a bastard. Mr. Levinson feels as if he was thrown out of his visions. He does not understand how this could happen. Liam immediately comes into his room, clearly not liking the freshman's tricks. Sam tries to apologize to him, pointing out that he just tried it out of curiosity, but the elder does not listen to him, and only notes that if in 1 month he exceeded the 4M mark, then that is not bad. But he still warns him that the freshman must be careful, of otherwise he will receive a response for any negligence. The main character swears to him that he will be extremely careful from now on, and after hesitating awkwardly, he wants to find out what genetic abilities Liam has. The senior student declares that he not only has genetic abilities, he has an ancient martial art called Lion's Roar, adjusted to his gene points. This art is capable of resisting telepathy. Sam is surprised he is hearing about this for the first time. Liam says that there are many types of genetic ability IDs. Also embarrassed, the main character asks his neighbor for a book that he saw he himself would also like to learn a little of his martial art. Liam agrees, but on the condition that he himself goes to the room to get her and bring her to Sam, reminding the neighbor that under no circumstances should he enter his room, much less spy on him. The hero willingly agrees to everything. As a result, the books ended up in his possession, and he began to read them all day long. Even if it was a busy street, he did not miss the opportunity to pick up a book and start studying a new martial art for him. While sitting in a class on audition, the book also did not leave his hands. The knowledge from there was really useful. Now he, for example, learned how great practices were reduced to ordinary meditation. After reading about this, Sam even fell a little nostalgic because his dad taught him to meditate. He only remembered that during meditation a person should be completely relaxed, take deep breaths or something like that. The young man decides that he will ask his neighbor about this as soon as he finishes reading the book. Suddenly, a classmate ran up to him and offered to go have a snack together, saying that he was treating him. Sam is a little embarrassed and says that he will probably be poorer with him. Hearing their conversation, the rest of their classmates also decide to join, because when will they have lunch with their already famous prefect? Sam, delighted at this reaction from those around him, agrees for them to all go together.